Hello, and welcome back to another video. This time, we'll be following up on a previous challenge and beating PvZ's minigames with only one plant per world. If you haven't seen the first part of this challenge, you can watch it using the link in the description. But the main thing you need to know is that we cannot use the shop, so no upgrade plants and, well, no extra seed slots, but that doesn't really matter here. Going back to the actual challenge, we begin on a fairly easy level, Zombas. Most of the Choose Your Seeds levels in this challenge tend to follow this trend, since we have Starfruit, one of the strongest attackers in the game. For this level, similar to other future Choose Your Seeds levels, I picked Puffshroom, Squash, and Garlic as support plants, which made this level pretty easy. I just stacked Sunflowers and Starfruits in the top, bottom, and middle lanes, protected them with Garlic, and beat the level pretty easily after that. And with that, we have beaten Zombotany on our first try, but the next level isn't going to be so easy. It's time for Walnut Bowling, and this level is only really difficult because of how I chose to interpret the rules for one specific plant. This level is balanced around the Explodonut, a walnut that explodes in the 3x3 area when it hits a zombie, but unfortunately, I can't use it here. This is because the Explodonut was first introduced in 1.5, which technically makes it a day plant just like the walnut, banning it from being used. And no, you can't just use only the Explodonut, since you get too few of them, making the weaker walnut the only choice. The only time I could use the Explodonut, just like other conveyor plants in the first video of this challenge, and other conveyor belt levels later, is wasting it by using it on an empty lane. Because of this, the level ended up taking me nearly 30 minutes and 3 attempts to beat. However, it's basically just RNG, so I have nothing else to say about it. Let's just skip to me beating it and move on to the next level. But if you thought it got any easier, you would be wrong, because this is the hardest level so far. Slot Machine has you spin the titular slot machine for sun and seed packets, with the goal being to accumulate 2000 sun to beat the level. However, the only plants this level gives are Sunflower, Pea Shooter, Walnut, and Snow Pea, all of which are day plants. The only plant which is given at a high enough frequency for us to survive is Pea Shooter, so we're locked into it. But if we use it, then we don't have Sunflowers, meaning that the only way we can beat this level is through getting good RNG on the random sun drops from the slot machine. We also can't use the falling sun from the sky, since it is in fact given at a slower rate compared to the slot machine's cooldown, and we have to keep spinning the machine in order to survive and possibly get sun. But the real issue is how infrequently these sun drops occur, since the intended solution of the level is to rely on primarily the sunflower drops and not the slot machine drops. How bad is it? Well, just look at what happens here. From 500 sun to 0, and totally overwhelmed by the end. Wow. We would need to be so much luckier to actually beat this level, that even with saves coming, I might not be able to beat this in a reasonable time frame. I also just don't want to saves come this level, so I'll be skipping it. However, the next level is not any easier, as its Raining Seeds is basically just Slot Machine, but with a different coat of paint. We might have access to plants from every world now, but that doesn't make this any better, since we have to survive 4 whole flags in fog. Additionally, we have to use Lily Pad here as our pull plant, and there are many more weaker plants in this game than stronger plants, sometimes forcing us to use up a weak plant from a world because we have no other choice, just like in this attempt, where I had to use Cabbage Bolt instead of Melon Bolt, and died in the second flag. But even when you get good plants, like in this attempt where I got 2 Melon Bolts early on, you can get screwed over by unlucky drops, as I had to sacrifice the mower in the top lane and got a repeater to defend against the Conehead in the third lane too late, which led me to lose a mower. And since the flag zombie and the wave immediately after came in that undefended lane, I had to lose the whole level. As for this next attempt, I ended up with a bunch of plants which didn't do all too much, like Chronopulp, Hypnoshroom, and Starfruit, and ended up dying during the first flag due to this awful RNG. Mind you, we still haven't faced a single football zombie, nor the bigger hordes later on, and this level already seems so insurmountable. Therefore, I decided to simulate an incredibly lucky run on the seed drops, and use PvZ tools to spawn in 2 columns of Melonpotes throughout the level, as well as Hypnoshrooms for football zombies and replacement Melonpotes for Bungee zombies. Now, while using all these plants may have been unnecessary to beat the level, and the actual odds are probably lower considering the potential to sacrifice mowers and other attackers being available, which could also deflect the Bungee zombies, I didn't really bother to find the minimum amount of cheated placements to realistically beat this, and the odds are too variable to calculate, so I'll end it here and move on to our next level, which is fortunately a break from this insanity. We move on to Invisible, where every zombie is invisible. This is a conveyor belt level, but we still have access to most of the plants available here, except Squash and Walnut, since Pea Shooter and Lilypad are too necessary here to leave out. On our first attempt, we did quite well, making it to the penultimate wave, and it seemed like we were about to beat the level on our first try, but then 2 Dolphin Riders took both our mowers, and we lost to the residual pool zombies on the final wave. As for this next attempt, it went much worse, since I lost my first and 5th lane mowers early on, and later on, I lost the mower on my 3rd lane to a Dolphin Rider. And since we have no pool cleaners, another Dolphin Rider came on that lane, leaped over the lily pad, and killed me. And in this attempt, a cone had spawned on the top lane on the first wave, and forced me to restart, as I only had 1 pea shooter there that could not kill it. This attempt ended up going better though, with us almost making it to the 2nd flag, but then, a Buckethead came on the 4th lane and ate both my pea shooters, and knowing how vulnerable the water lanes are in this level, I just restarted to save time. My next run on the level ended up going even worse than the last one, with me only having 1 Kernel Pult on lane 2 and getting overwhelmed there, as well as having literally no attacker on the 1st lane and losing the mower there, forcing yet another restart. But finally, on my 6th attempt, I ended up beating this level, because I was able to get 3 rows of pea shooters on most ground lanes to kill Zombonis, as well as a lot of lily pads to defend the pool by baiting out Dolphin Riders and stalling, which actually let me win in the end while only losing the mower on the 2nd lane. And very luckily, the next few levels aren't going to be as difficult as what we just went through. Starting with Seeing Stars, this level forces us to plant a lot of Starfruits, which is already our go-to strategy for Choose Your Seeds levels, making the gimmick a non-issue. Afterwards, I just used the same loadout as in Zombotany, and since we only have to deal with brown coats here, I beat this level right after the first huge wave and won in less than 5 minutes. Moving on to Big Trouble Little Zombie. This is another conveyor belt level, where we have Lilypad as our pool plant, and a choice between Pea Shooter, Walnut, and Cherry Bomb as our day plant. Of course, we choose Pea Shooter, and seeing that this level is 3 flags long, you might expect this to be pretty difficult. However, the zombies are so weak, and we get enough Pea Shooters, that combined with clogging the conveyor with 4 Cherry Bombs, which are more common than Walnuts, we easily fend them off on our first try. We move on to Portal Combat, and we're back to conveyor levels being quite difficult and RNG based. This level gives us Torchwood for our pool plant, Cactus for our fog plant, and a choice between Pea Shooter, Repeater, Cherry Bomb, and Walnut for our day plant. Of course, we choose Repeater since it's the only plant which comes frequently enough and deals enough damage to act as sufficient DPS, since Cactus won't be doing enough damage. My strategy for this level was initially to place my attackers in the 2nd and 4th lanes due to the initial portal layout, then the middle, then the sides, but making sure to prioritize every lane having a cactus for balloon zombies later on. I also placed my cacti in the 2nd column and repeaters in the 1st, and plugged the conveyor with 4 cherry bombs, since they come decently often and can be hard to get rid of. With these strategies, I made it pretty far into the 2nd flag, but died to a big cluster of bucketheads in the moralist 1st lane. As for this next attempt, something pretty funny happened when the portals rearranged, as this zombie just teleported into my mower. But despite this, I actually did even better in this attempt and made it to the final wave, but ultimately lost to a football zombie and a lot of basic zombies in the 2nd lane. However, on my 3rd attempt, everything went well and I got good RNG, which let me beat this level without losing any mowers in the end. As for column like you see we get a lot of choices here, between Potato Mine and Chopper for our day plant, Walnut Squash and Jalapeno for our pool plant, Magnetrum and Pumpkin for our fog plant, and Flower Pot and Melon Bolt for our roof plant. We of course choose Potato Mine as our day plant, Jalapeno as our pool plant, and Melon Bolt as our roof plant, as well as choosing Pumpkin over Magnetrum. This level was fairly RNG based with getting enough jalapenos and melon bolts to deal with the zombies, but this time the odds were on our side and let us beat this level on our first try, with only one close call with an imp on the final wave due to the slower rate of the conveyor as the level progresses. And now we move on to what I call the patch of easy levels, starting with Bobsled Bonanza, where only Zombonis and bobsled teams spawn. While we do have to sacrifice 2 mowers in the bottom lanes early on, this level is very easy with our core combo of Sunflower, Lilypad, and Starfruit, plus Doomshroom and Coffee Bean, which we used once in the early game to save ourselves, but after that, it was just smooth sailing. Then we have Zombie Nimble Zombie Quick, which runs the game at 2 times speed. This gimmick is very impactful because it means we win twice as fast by spinning Starfruits, and move on to our next level. Now we face Last Stand, where our Starfruits actually aren't enough to deal with the huge crowds, but because of the gimmick of this level, we don't need to use Sunflower, letting us use Walnut as our day plant. Then, we used Melon Bolt as a supplementary attacker, and since we don't have Puffshroom or Coffee Bean, we don't have a night plant, but it doesn't matter as just Walnuts with lily pads and attackers are enough to beat this level. We move on to Zombotany 2, and we pretty much use the same loadout as Zombotany, except with Lilypad for Squash. Despite the extra flag and stronger zombies, this level is still easy with Starfruits and Garlics, which especially counter Jalapeno zombies, and we beat it again on our first try. Now, Walnut Bowling 2 seems like it's very difficult with 3 flags and only 1 not usable, but unlike the first bowling level, we can clog the conveyor here, which means that by clogging the conveyor with 4 walnuts and 4 Explodonuts, we can almost always get giant walnuts, which, as expected, beat this again on our first try with only 1 more loss. But now we move on to a real challenge, Pogo Party. I began with our normal Starfruit strategy, since Squash deals with Pogos early on, and Starfruit deals damage to zombies behind it, as well as multiple stars being able to hit the Pogos that are directly above it. However, due to the fast speed of Pogo zombies, even with extra setup time, 1 Starfruit is not enough to kill this Pogo, and since we have no mowers, we die. But there is another plant which might solve these issues, the Split Pea. Regular zombies only spawn on the 3 huge waves, so Split Peas can be placed in the 9th column in order to deal a lot of damage to Pogos. However, this ended up not working because if you look closer, once a Pogo reaches a low enough point at the back of the lawn, the backward shots just don't hit and the Pogo kills us. Because we need more time to set up multiple Split Peas in a lane, I decided to pre-plant the Squash at the back on this attempt, and actually got lucky enough for it to work. I then fended the zombies off with only Squashes, which let me get 2 Split Peas against the Pogo, but it still wasn't enough, since the second Split Pea in the middle of the lawn didn't deal enough damage. Since that wasn't enough, I decided that the best course of action was to place the Split Pea on the 8th column instead, but on this attempt I didn't pre-plant the Squash, and I responded to a Pogo too late, which ended up killing me. As for this attempt, I did get a second Split Pea on the 8th column, but it was still too late, and the Pogo ended up killing me. This strategy is just so difficult to pull off, but then I had an idea that could improve it. Tall Nut. I could use the Tall Nut instead of Squash, and even if it doesn't kill Pogos, it stalls them out long enough to die to Split Pea. Not to mention, killing Pogos with Squash sped up how fast the waves go, giving less time to set up defenses and collect Sun. This way, I could make every wave as long as possible, letting me set up defenses for later on, and with that, we easily beat the level on this attempt with 4 columns of Split Peas. I never thought Split Pea and Tall Nut would be better than Starfruit and Squash, but I guess there's a first for everything. We now move on to the final level of the minigames page, Dr. Zombas' Revenge. Last time we fought Zombas in Adventure, it was quite easy since even without the Lawnmower exploit, we just used Melon Bolt as a roof plant and of course the Jalapeno and Ice Shrimp. But even though we know the right strategy now, I still lost this first attempt due to an unlucky van destroying our flower pots and leaving us helpless. Additionally, Zombas has 60,000 health in this minigame compared to his 40,000 in Adventure, making this level much tougher, since the reason we won last time was that we were able to kill him quickly enough before he threw the van. In fact, this one change makes the level so much harder that unlike the easy first try win with this strategy in Adventure, I took many attempts to beat this level this time, and you're just going to see how tough it was. At this point, I got tired of retrying the level since I was just playing for good enough RNG to win, so I decided to use PvZ tools in order to change my seed slots and get more jalapenos and ice shrooms, which finally let me close out this level at last. I think out of the levels where I use cheats in this challenge, this is probably the most doable one, but I'm not going to be sitting here for hours trying to roll for better luck, so let's just end it here. But if you thought that the challenge was over, then you would be wrong, since we're also going to play through the secret limbo page levels, beginning with our challenge Walnut, where I have to place walnuts to create a walnut. We can't use sunflower as our day plant here, but we can use sunshroom and coffee bean as an alternate sun producer, and while it is a lot slower, requiring us to sacrifice 2 more at the start, we're able to get our sun production going, and by placing starfruits in the middle of the ring of walnuts, we're able to fend off the zombies and beat the level quite easily. Moving on to Sunny Day, this time we have no real gimmicks affecting our loadout, and in fact, our sun production is better with the big suns falling from the sky, and the zombies aren't that threatening, so I yet again just use the classic starfruit loadout and win easily. And now we have Unsodded, a very difficult level where we can only plant in the 3 middle lanes. If only we had a plant that could attack every lane and win us this level with ease. That's right, it's just starfruit again. And now we move on to Big Time, where we get even more of a sun production boost than in Sunny Day, which lets us set up a ton of starfruits with garlic protection and beat yet another level easily. But now we face a real challenge, our challenge Sunflower. Despite the name of the level, we ironically can't use the sunflower here, as we have to use starfruit, walnut, and umbrella leaf in order to build the sunflower shape, and since we have our roof slot taken up by a useless plant, we also can't use sunshroom, meaning that we have to beat this level with just the falling sun from the sky. Of course, for our night and pool slots, we bring Puffshroom to stall and squash the cheaply killed bucketheads, and on our first attempt, I focused on placing starfruits in the first and third lane, as well as at the back of the second lane slots and walnuts in the second lane, but I ended up losing 2 starfruits at the front to zombies eating them, and I reset, knowing that I wouldn't be able to be efficient enough to beat the level. On my next attempt, I focused on placing all the starfruits first, then started placing the umbrella leaves and walnuts. Additionally, since I don't have any plants in the bottom 2 lanes, I can also sacrifice mowers for zombies that don't get killed by the starfruits like the bucketheads. I was actually 1 umbrella leaf away from winning here, when 2 coneheads in the 3rd lane came when I didn't have the sun for a squash, and killed 2 starfruits. A basic zombie also came in the bottom lane and was going to kill my umbrella leaves, so I had to reset again. As for my next attempt, I placed walnuts outside of the sunflower build in order to protect my starfruits in the upper 3 lanes, which did stall the zombies out and let me go further into the level, but it also cost a lot of sun, and due to the wave spawn ramping, I eventually got overwhelmed, and due to the extra sun expenditure, I couldn't even put down any of the umbrella leaves. As for my 4th attempt, I placed only 1 walnut outside of the sunflower to stall a buckethead, but I still ended up resetting here, since just like in the first attempt, I lost 2 starfruits and I knew I wouldn't be able to beat the level. But on my 5th attempt, I ended up finally beating the level. I employed a new strategy, where I didn't place the front starfruit in the second lane until I had 525 sun saved up. The reason for this is that without that starfruit, you can use the walnuts in the second lane to stall out zombies and save resources, and once you have 525 sun, you can quickly place the starfruit and 4 umbrella leaves to quickly beat the level. I also got fairly lucky here and didn't lose any starfruits on the 1st and 3rd lanes, which led to me finally beating this level after nearly an hour of attempts. But after that, we move on to more easy levels, such as Air Raid, where only balloon zombies spawn. Because of this, we can't use our normal strategy, but we just use Blover to beat every wave, Sunflower for sun production, and Lilypad and Doomshroom to kill the zombies that do spawn on the huge waves. I did have to sacrifice some mowers early on in order to get everything set up, but the level was still very easy. Next, we have High Gravity, a 2-flag level where all normal projectiles fall down after traveling a short distance. I initially thought that this level would be quite difficult, as we only have 3 columns due to the roof, since we need to use Coffee Bean with Fume Shroom. However, it turns out that we can accumulate enough sun early on with Squash support and a few Fume Shrooms to defend the second flag, with 3 columns of Fume Shrooms protected by pumpkins without running out of sun. We don't even need to use Squash in the latter half of the level, and we surprisingly beat this level on our first try. Then, we move on to Grave Danger, a night level where graves spawn on each wave and ambushes happen on every flag. Now, this might normally be difficult, but we can still use our Starfruit strategy, but we just use Sunshroom for sun production since it's more efficient than Sunflower at nighttime, and for our day plant, we use Walnut. This still gives us enough sun to spam the board with starfruits as long as we sacrifice a mower for the first zombie, letting us win with 4 mowers standing. We move on to another conveyor belt level with Dark Stormy Night, but this level is actually quite easy, as we get lily pad, cactus, and puffshroom as our only bull, fog, and night plants, and a choice between pea shooter and cherry bomb for our day plant. So I just choose the pea shooter, and even without cherry bomb, we still have enough damage to deal with the zombies in this level, with the biggest threats being dolphin riders, where we can just use lily pads to stop them, allowing us to beat this level on our first try yet again. And finally, we have our last level, Bungee Blitz. Here, we can use pumpkin and flower pot without any issues as our fog and roof plants, and for our day plant, it's a choice between cherry bomb and chomper, and since we get many chompers, we pick chomper here and just waste our cherry bombs. Even without mowers, we just spam our flower pots, pumpkins, and chompers, and somehow, despite this level being 3 flags long and us having no mowers, we can still clog our conveyor belt with 4 cherry bombs and win on our first try. And with that, this challenge is done, and we can say that it is indeed possible to beat Plants vs. Zombies minigames with only 1 plant per world. As for Can You Dig It, we only get pea shooters, so I just skipped it, and I did plan to do the puzzles and survivals, but the survivals would be pretty much the same strategy of just star fruits and melon bulbs over and over again, while the puzzles were somewhat interesting, but they were still quite easy, so I'll end it here, and I'll say that yes, not only can the minigames be beaten with 1 plant per world, but we can 100% Plants vs. Zombies with only 1 plant per world and no shop. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and have a great rest of your day.